Okay, now this is not going to be a full guide on how to write a letter in Korean. It's going to be some essential tips that you need to know in order to write a letter. And of course, this will be much more helpful if you already know basic Korean. In general, you can write a letter to someone the same way that you would speak with that person. Now, remember to be polite, of course, with some differences. So if you're writing to a friend or someone you're close with, you can use their name like normal, or you can use one of the words like 오빠, 언니, 형, or 누나. So their title, essentially. Or if you're writing to someone famous, you could use their work title, like what sort of job are they doing. For example, a singer would be 가수, and an actor would be 배우. So this is generally how you would talk to them though as well. So to start a letter, you would use their name, followed by possibly one of these titles, and then you want to say to, so to that person. And you can do that with the particle 에게, or if you're speaking honorifically, you would use the particle 게. Both of these mean to. Now, this is how you start a letter, by saying to a person. You don't want to try to translate the word dear. In English, we might say dear Charsu, while in Korean, they say to Charsu. So if you were writing a letter to your friend Charsu, you could say Charsu에게, or to your teacher, you could say 선생님께. Okay, before we go any further though, there's something I have to talk about, and that's politeness. Letters will typically be a tad more polite than you would talk to someone. And that's especially if the person isn't very close to you. Because although a letter is really you're just communicating with another person, it has a bit of a formal feel to it. And an easy way to make sure you're doing this is just to avoid using any sort of slang if you're not really close to that person. Okay, so you started the letter, you said, dear so-and-so. What goes next? Well, it's going to be very similar to how you would write a letter in English. You're going to start with a greeting. Let me give you some examples. So to start, you could say something like hello, or you can ask them how they're doing. So 안녕하세요, or 잘 지내고 있어요. Are you doing well? Just like in English. Or you can state why you're writing the letter. For example, I am writing you because I am curious about something, just like you would in English. And then you can finish the letter by wishing them well. So you can say something like 항상 건강하세요. So take care, or literally always be healthy, just like you would in English. Okay, so let's talk about some differences then. A form you'll see a little bit more commonly in writing than in speaking is 길. Now, 길 is just a shortened version of this, but this one's more common, and the way it works is by attaching 길 after an action verb stem, followed by a verb that implies you hope or you wish something. So a really common verb this is used with is 바라다, which means to hope or to wish. So you can say action verb here with 길, 바라다, and conjugate it to say I hope or I wish that you can something. So pay extra attention to when you see this ending, because it implies something coming after, often, is going to be like a verb that implies hoping or wishing or praying for something. And it's not only 바라다, you might also see the verb 빌다, which actually means to wish or to pray for something, but they both kind of work the same way. For example, you might see this expression used in letters, 건강하길 바라요. So 건강하다 is to be healthy, so I hope that you are healthy. So I hope that you're healthy. I'll write it over here, but something you really should know about this verb 바라다 is that although it is 바라다, it's more commonly, incorrectly, written and pronounced as 바래. So you'll see 바래 or 바래요 used 9 out of 10, but the correct one should be 바라요. Okay, so we've talked about how to start a letter and things that you can use, and again, it's mostly going to be the same way you would talk to them, but ending the letter, when you finally finish it, is a little bit different, and there are several ways you can end a letter. In English, we might just say, from Billy, from Charsu, like that. But in Korean, it's a bit different. Now, if you are writing a letter to a close friend, you have 3 different options you can use. And the first one is simply writing your name. So if you write a letter and your name's Billy, you simply end the letter at the bottom line by writing Billy. And this would be similar to how you might end an email in English. So you would just write your name. So keep in mind this is only for your close friends. You don't want to use this for a more formal letter. But a more common and better way to end a letter if you're writing to a close friend is by using 이,가, or just 가. Now, the way you do it is you take your name, and if your name ends in a consonant, you'll attach 이가. And if your name ends in a vowel, you'll simply attach 가. Now, this 가 is the regular subject marker, so it implies that person, 가, wrote the letter. So 빌리가 wrote the letter, kind of like that. Let me give you just two examples. 철수가, so from 철수. Or if your name is 희진, you would say 희진이 가, so from 희진. And this one I would recommend for your close friends. But if you're writing a letter to a close friend, you can also take your name just like before and attach 씀, so 빌리 씀. And this 씀 comes from the verb 쓰다, meaning to write, so literally Billy wrote this. That's another option as well. For anyone who's not a close friend though, you don't want to use any of those three. There's a much better one you want to use, and that is your name plus 드림. Now, 드림 comes from the verb 드리다, which is the humble version of the verb 주다. It means to give. So basically, Billy gives, 빌리 드림, like that, from Billy. So it's kind of like saying, I give this to you. And this is the best one you want to use if you're writing formally. So if you're not writing to a close friend, end your letter with your name followed by 드림. But there's one more option you have. You can also use 올림 in the same way after your name. 올림 comes from the verb 올리다, which is another very polite way to say to give. 올리다 is like to raise up, like you're offering it to them, you're presenting it to them. So 빌리 올림 is like presented by, given by 빌리, kind of like that. A little bit more polite than 드림, but it's not as commonly used as 드림 because it does have a little bit of a more formal feel to it. Okay, and there's one more thing I want to say about letters before we finish this video, and that is don't stress too much about letters. Letters are really about what you're expressing from your heart, and the person receiving it will know that. So small grammar or spelling mistakes are not going to diminish your message. And adding to that, I don't recommend that you ask someone else to write a letter for you. Again, these are personal letters. They are from your heart. Now, I'm not saying don't try to show it to a native and have them check it before you send it, but I'm saying don't rely too much on that. Because the person receiving your letter will appreciate it regardless of the mistakes. In fact, even more because they knew it came from your heart, much more than if you were to send them a perfectly translated letter that clearly was written by someone else. So if you need some help with writing a letter, just keep in mind whoever you're sending it to is probably going to be happy with it, even if it's not perfect. So do you have any other tips for writing letters in Korean? Let me know in the comments below. I do check all of those. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in another episode. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.